This whole space with Bitcoin and AI is absolutely fascinating to me. You know, they're both obviously very powerful technical innovations that are going to transform economies, societies, products, and everything that we do with respect to commerce. But how are they going to go together?
Like, people need to understand this. Like, the commerce is going to explode. So the idea is that this may make our pie bigger too. But this is not a new pie that we're going to monopolize as Bitcoiners. Visa is going to make more money than ever in the next 5 years.
And then on the labor front, as you mentioned, you know, with robotics, I am astounded at the advancement in robotics in just 2 or 3 years. And so I'm wondering, what is there left to do for people who rely on their labor? I don't know the answer to that.
I think that the main users of AI and AI agents will be other AI agents. So we are not going to see this kind of lagging adoption, because it's going to be literally like, if I am able to create an AI agent that can use other AI agents, I am able to replicate these to billions in no time. So it's going to look really, really differently than most of the other adoption curves in the world, or how technology usually gets adopted.
We can just, yeah. So I saw you on the Presidio podcast, and they were talking, and maybe 3/4 of the way through it, they mentioned your name, because this is something I'm really interested in, and it's so difficult for me to find technical people in the specific area that I'm interested in, because a lot of devs, they're not really interested in being active on social media, and I understand that they have their own communities and whatever that I don't really engage with so much, because it's not my place. So I was really happy that they mentioned you and you agreed to come on, because this whole space with Bitcoin and AI is absolutely fascinating to me, because you know they're both obviously very powerful technical innovations that are going to transform economies, societies, products, and everything that we do with respect to commerce. But how are they going to go together? So perhaps you can start just by telling us a little bit about yourself, so you can introduce yourself to the audience and they know who you are.
Yeah. So I'm Jordi, software developer. Studied math and theoretical computer science. Really into theoretical computer science at the beginning. Then saw that the major impact that I could have in the world was through code, not theory. And I was like, okay, so I will start joining startups and helping them ship the code that actually changes the world. Discovered Bitcoin, as everyone does, no? Maybe 2012, 2013. Didn't know how it worked, didn't understand it. It was 20 gigabytes of blockchain. So I was like, but what is this? Has been running for 30 minutes and it's not working. Let's just shut it down and forget about it. Then study Austrian economics before joining Bitcoin again. And then when I saw Bitcoin, it clicked. When I already had the theory of economics, I was like, okay, I understand this. This is what I need to coordinate with the people that think like me around the world. Sent an email to Lightning Labs. At the beginning, I didn't even know who Lalu or anything was. I just sent an email there saying I have some skills. I think that I can help pass the interviews, and they let me join the company. So I spent a couple of years there having fun with L&D, shipping the software that people are using today for making payments on Bitcoin. I wasn't that happy with the adoption of the Lightning Network. I think that we can do much, much better. And we were shipping at Lightning Labs and then other labs in the industry, really amazing pieces of technology. And there is not that many people building on top of it. So I was like, okay, it's not my main thing. What I really like is what I did at Lightning Labs. That's my passion, let's say. But I was someone needs to be on the other side and start, pulling this into the market, into products that people use. Then ChatGPT happened, and I was like, okay, so this is it. This is the opportunity. I wrote a blog post called something like "Building for the Next Million Users," and it was this idea of we have a really good payment network, it can be used by machines. Now I know that there is something wrong there. That it's not going to be 1 million. That it's going to go from 0 to billions, really, really quickly. And yeah, that's what I did. I just left Lightning Labs, created a company called FewSats, and I started building into this intersection between AI and Bitcoin.
Your Twitter handle for FewSats is @FewSats.
Yes.
Yeah, few like FEW sats, like, Satoshi's.
Yeah.
Everyone's familiar with that. So give few sats a follow as well. That's a really interesting journey because as a developer, I'm interested in what your reaction was when you did come across the Bitcoin technology, and as you said, it was 20 gigs to download. And what were your initial thoughts about that? Because to some people, that's very clunky, and perhaps it could be a bit of a disincentive to get involved. It's like, so yeah. Please expand on that.
Yeah, like the main problem that I had back then was that I didn't understand for what. So 20 gigabytes is not that much, but it's more than a movie. And then when you are introduced to Bitcoin for first time, you just start downloading it, and then you don't understand why I would want a copy of the blockchain in my laptop before starting. So you just estimate it. Like anyone who is into Visa or into central banks would say like, wow, this is amazing. With only 20 gigabytes, I have all the history of transactions in the world, and I am able to, like join this network. So it's like an incredible like technological achievement. But for someone on the street, like I was myself, I was like, this is more than 3 movies. Like, why would I download this? I just don't get it. My Venmo app works properly already. When I want to send money to my friend, it's already there without downloading 20 gigabytes. So, if you don't understand exactly what problem you're trying to solve, it's really hard to assess if it's a good solution or not. And I think that that's something that happens to a lot of people, even right now when they talk about Bitcoin.
So you then went into working with Lightning Labs. The Lightning Network, it seems to have it's not so much controversy as there seems to be people playing it down and people who are incredibly enthusiastic and optimistic about what it could potentially do. Perhaps you can help us make some sense of that. You mentioned that you were kind of disappointed about the rate of adoption of Lightning. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So first of all, like in most of the crypto world out there, you can see amazing teams that promise stuff, and then you go 3 years later, and they like switch all the roadmap, and like now they are working on something else. Like you can imagine, like the computer of the world, ultrasound money. It's about rollups and zero knowledge proof. So every time that, for example, I go to the Ethereum ecosystem, every time that I listen to a conversation, they are talking about something different. So it's really hard for me to catch up. I have a really small brain. So, like if you keep changing stuff, I say like, well, I don't know, again, what problem we are solving. And I always try to solve problems in this way. Like I identify the problem, and then I think about solutions. I never take a solution and try to apply it. So with the Lightning Network, it's amazing because we have a payment network that has been working for years. Like it's not a promise that, like this someday will work. It's already working today. It has its pros and cons. But it's something that if you want to join, you can today. Then the promise was payments on Bitcoin, and that's there. However, I don't know what it is with Bitcoin. I don't know if there is not enough people with Bitcoin that is able to spend it. That's something that for me was really, really curious. When I ask people, do you have Bitcoin? Some people say yes. I say, okay, can you spend it? They say like, no, I don't know how to do that. I have Bitcoin somewhere. Like my nephew came one day. I have the words somewhere. Like, just let me check. But it's not something that it's ready for people to spend there.
Well, I have to confess that I was one of those people because I pretty much had my entire net worth in Bitcoin for almost 2 years, and until I went to El Salvador and Carla and Walker said, yeah, you can pay with Bitcoin for your coffee or for your cocktails as we were drinking. I hadn't had the opportunity because I'm in London. I don't need a payments network, right? I'm not trying to, I'm not really doing anything where I need financial privacy for my daily transactions is what I'm trying to say, right? Whereas in other parts of the world, that is essential for them. But that was the first time that I actually used Lightning to pay for anything. And I was so impressed with how easy it was and how quickly the transaction went through. It wasn't really much more inconvenient or all that different from the traditional payment rails that we use. You just wave your phone or wave a card and it worked. So I was impressed with that. But then I quickly found out there's a whole back end issue that can arise if you're looking to pay for bills that are of a certain size. So Walker tried to pay for his hotel bill at one point, like not enough liquidity. I didn't understand what that meant. And then later on, when I researched the whole idea of channels and liquidity to lubricate commerce, I understood that later on. But for the average person, they're just going to look at it and say it doesn't work. So they don't care about channels or liquidity. They don't want an answer. They just want it to work, right?
And for me, for example, that I help building it, every time that I pay, I'm impressed. It's like, wow, I know everything that goes behind this. This is amazing. But my wife sees it and says like, okay, yeah, like the payment went through. So what? All my payments go through. Like I go, like we're in Canada. Do I need to send money with Interact? That is like the internal cell. I think it's in here in the US. So it just works. Or the SEPA, it just works. Do you need to pay with credit card? It just works. Like there is never like all these problems. And for sure, something that did never happen to a normal customer was a card declined. And then the guy saying like, well, let me see, like, can you contact your person in the bank so they can call to Visa to see maybe like there is some contract that it's not going through, like maybe in between the banks with the settlement. It's like people don't care about anything like this. And with Bitcoin, always, the first thing when something was wrong, most of the time they try to blame the victim of the thing, that it's not working. It's like, oh, this is crap, like it doesn't work. It's like, oh, it's not crap, it's just that you don't understand liquidity. Yeah, they don't have to understand liquidity.
They don't have to understand it. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things when like I'm kind of reluctant to increase my technical knowledge of Bitcoin because my focus is really I am a consumer. I look at myself as a consumer of services. My background in my previous life was assessing these kinds of products, strategy, consumer behaviors, that sort of stuff, and sort of marketing type things, right? So I'm not going to LARP and try to catch up on computer science and all the rest of that just so I can participate in these discussions. And I know that the Bitcoin community, because it has a very, its origins are ideological. Like, they were driven by people who were very much libertarians and very much, technology people. And I think a lot of people think that they have to live up to that in order to be part of the community. But actually, there are lots of different niches. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm a part of the technical cohort. There are people who devote their lives to computer science. They can teach me. I can listen to them. I can talk to them as experts. I don't need to pretend. But still, one of the things that I do whenever I try to orange pill anybody who shows a bit of interest is to send them $5 on the Lightning Network. Download an app. Here's $5. And honestly, it's such a light bulb moment when they see how well it works, and then you just explain to them like you can spend that if you want, but there's a base layer that will take a lot longer. But this is the consumer app. And so as a consumer, I'm interested in this part. But like, why do you think that's not taking off as much as you would have hoped?
So this is a guess. Like I don't know. If I knew, I would already be working on fixing it. So the first thing is like to be optimist. Like I see it growing. It's just that it's not at the growth at the rate that I would like. I would like to see Bitcoin used much more in payments. There are many people even that they think that it will never be for payments. Like there's all the Michael Saylor kind of branch. And it's like, listen, this is value. You just store it here, and then we pay with something else. We get credits on these and things like that, and use another kind of thing for paying. Like that's one of the possible futures. It's not the one that I am most excited about, but I'm not going to fight reality. And this is something that I have like really, really like clear, that it's not like reality is wrong. Like it's my model of the world. So if something it's not working as I expected, I am the one that needs to update and maybe like change to make reality change. But it's not like they are just stupid or something like that. Like I see many Bitcoiners that they take this stand, like, oh, why they still use Visa? It's just like they are not smart enough, If they just knew, it's like no, it's not that.
I think it's really important that Michael Saylor, like every one of us, comes to the Bitcoin with a particular point of view. He represents his experiences and his interests as a Bitcoin investor, and I love listening to him. But can he accurately reflect the motivations and the interests of someone in Latin America or in Africa or in Asia or in the Middle East, whose life is in danger? and you may need to move value around. Not so accurately. I know he's had the experience in Argentina where he's lost a lot of money through currency debasement. That was rather sudden. But my point is not to disparage Michael, but to say that we all have our life circumstances, and Bitcoin can accommodate different people in different ways. For me, store of value is very much the primary purpose of Bitcoin, because I have many, many options to transact, to send value as a means of exchange. So I guess that sort of leads me to ask whether or not most of the people who are in Bitcoin right now need it to be a means of exchange, and which kind of is leading me towards why I invited you to discuss autonomous artificial intelligence agents using Bitcoin. I mean, could that be the killer use case for Lightning?
So for sure, agents are going to need to transact. Lightning is one of the ways, but they need a payment method. Like, they need to be able to transact with something. I don't think that it will only be Lightning. Like, it's not that people in the world don't notice that AI need to transact, and then we have this payment network that it's Lightning, and we're going to be able to, grow it a lot. And for the time that other people discover, like, Lightning is already the way. I am 100% sure that big companies like Visa and MasterCard are looking into how to do agents that transact. Big companies like Stripe are really, really active on how can we, process payments for AI. People in Bitcoin, I don't see that many. There are a few of us that are doing this. For example, Christopher from Open Agents, the big guy doing a lot of stuff. But when I talk with people, like, the community is not that big. Like, I can literally call all of us and have a Zoom call almost. Then I know that all the other companies, all the other crypto branch are doing stuff with this. So if you go to Solana, you can see them working on this. If you go to Base from Coinbase, they are working to this. So I think that it's going to be really, really hard for Lightning to just capture all that growth, because the reality is that the consumer is going to have many, many options, and they are going to choose whatever fits best. So yeah, we are one of the options, or the Lightning, it's one of the options. It's a good option, but we will see how many people adopt it through that.
I think it's appropriate that the community of believers is small in this regard, because it was only, was it 18 months ago that ChatGPT launched?
It's about 2 years.
Is it 2 years? Okay. And before that launch, the general population had no conception of how powerful artificial intelligence apps, just basic apps, could be. And that was what we were exposed to. I had no idea. I was blown away by the initial launch, despite its limitations. And what was equally stunning was the rate of progress of the new models that were updated and released to the public. And just, was it last week or the week before, there's a platform called Replit. I'm sure you know of Replit. I'm looking at that for a bunch of sort of MVPs that I want to build. I'm not a dev, so this is my dream come true, right? Replit is my dream come true. And I briefly started experimenting with it, and I've got a long way to go. But essentially what it does is you prompt it, and for people listening at home, I'm sure you know, but you prompt it and it builds an app. So, you tell it to build any kind of app, workout tracking app, and then it just goes and builds that based on what it understands your request to be. And then you can iterate and debug through following up with prompts as well. So I guess the power of AI, just from a consumer perspective, is really ramping up quickly. But most people don't understand that these agents can actually do things of value autonomously. That's the point I was making. The progress has been so rapid that even though people don't understand right now, they will very soon have their lives consumed by autonomous agents that can do all sorts of things. But I don't know of what kind of use case is most likely to be first. So we can understand trading bots, for example, right?
Yeah.
What else? What else could?
So there is like two kind of branches here. The first one is one sentence that I adopted a few months ago, that it's the idea that AI is the new UI. So right now, for interacting with apps, people go to the browser. Like they go to the browser and then you go to the app that you want to use, that it's a domain, and then you have an account there and you are able to interact with it. Now this is going to change. It's not the browser anymore. You're going to be wherever interacting with an AI. You're going to tell the AI what you need to do, and then they're going to be the ones using that app under the hood. So you can imagine like using your ChatGPT app as the front end for everything. So whenever you want to get information about your bank statement, you don't need to go anymore to your bank app in the browser to get that and then put it in an Excel. And then in Excel, it's where you go and do some kind of plot. You can ask the AI, like, please create me the plot from my bank, and it's going to be able to get the data, create the plot, all from the same app. So for this is a big change for payments, because most of the time that you interact with stuff, sometimes you need to pay. For example, for all e-commerce. So I think that e-commerce will be one of the first ones. So it's this idea of right now, if I want to buy clothes from Zara, H&M, and Mango, I have to go to 3 different web pages and like look for the shoes that I'm interested. This is going to change. Like there's going to be my AI that is like, I want shoes from my stores, and it's going to be able to show me all the new shoes in these 3 stores. For me, it's indifferent where we are buying them from. I'm going to be able to add them to a cart, and then I'm going to click purchase, and then it's the agent, the one that goes and purchases it in the store itself. So that would be the first one.
So I guess the thing that immediately pops into my mind is, why won't they just use conventional payment rails? Why won't they just use your credit card that's stored on your Amazon account, or even just within your agent's account in the settings that you've just got a payment card? Why won't it do that?
So the reality is they will. So this idea of, okay, so there is this new thing. This is what I meant, that this is not going to grow in Lightning and the rest of the world is not going to see. Like Visa is going to make more money than ever in the next 5 years. Like people need to understand this. Like the commerce is going to explode. So the idea is that this may make our pie bigger too. But this is not a new pie that we're going to monopolize as Bitcoiners. So for example, the stablecoins, it's one of the biggest things that is happening right now, and will take a big share of the AI agent economic transactions. And you can see that with Stripe. Stripe, they did their biggest purchase ever of a company for $1 billion for a company called Bridge. They are just a stablecoin company. Like they say, like, well, we want to bring stablecoins to commerce. And they didn't do that for trading. Like until now, most of the people have been mocking the crypto community because they think meme coins. They say, well, there's no value there. Like it's just a casino. Stablecoins are not for casinos. They are for commerce. And you can see this in Coinbase. Coinbase Commerce is growing, and they are looking into integrating to more and more things for payments. And this is really important. Like they are looking to integrate for payments. They are not, now you can use your fart coin to purchase shoes, but they want to say, like, whenever you need to purchase stuff, there is USDC, and you have a wallet with us, and you're able to purchase those shoes. You can see this in Solana. Solana now, I went to one of the biggest conferences in about AI agents from AI Engineer in New York, and I was surprised that the main sponsor was Solana, and they were doing like really good marketing. Like they had like a main poster that said like less than 5 minutes to integrate, less than 2 cents per transaction, less than 0.5 seconds on average per transaction. So if you need to integrate payments, we are the thing.
And so how does Bitcoin compete against stablecoins, Solana in the agentic payment domain? So how does that, and what benefit does it offer?
So Bitcoin for payments, right now it's not being used that much. I don't know if it's because of the distribution of it. I have been thinking about this quite a lot, and I don't know what it is, but it may be the distribution of Bitcoin, like how Bitcoin is distributed around the world. Maybe it's with people that don't want to interact with them, or when they want to transact with them, they already have other means. So that may be one of the causes. On the other hand, for things like shitcoins, you are able to distribute it in a different way, For example, if you are a big VC, you are able to make them flow down through your companies, and your companies can spend them between them. And then you already have something that is valuable, that it's the network. If you're a big VC, your network is worth a lot. And then you're introducing a new currency, so people inside that network can start transacting. And that seems to give them a push on how they achieve value for payments. With Bitcoin, you cannot do that. Like if you're a VC, you cannot just give away Bitcoin. You cannot create Bitcoin out of thin air and just test the stuff. So maybe that's one of the reasons. We have the Lightning Network now that it's going to become a multi-coin network or a multi-asset network with things like Taproot assets. So that may be one of the ways where Bitcoin finds its place in this commerce network. So people are going to be able to have their asset. They are able to plug it into the Lightning Network. The core of the Lightning Network may still be Bitcoin for routing the payments, but the asset that I use to send or receive, it's different. So in that way, I really like the way Elizabeth Stark put it with the idea of we are Bitcoinizing the world or Bitcoinizing the dollar. So the dollar is still like the main thing at the edges, but in between, there is a lot of Bitcoin helping moving these currencies. And this is a pattern that you can see repeatedly in other companies. For example, Lightspark, they also have this idea of, okay, we are going to connect all the financial institutions of the world through Bitcoin. So we're not going to make everyone use Bitcoin. It's not like, okay, so go to Lightspark, create an account. Okay, now you can purchase your Bitcoin, send it here, you can start transacting. But it's going to be more like, well, I want to send, before we were talking about Venmo or Cash App, when you want to send money between users there, it's really, really easy. When I want to send money to users between other banks that are in the same country, it's usually really, really easy. When I want to send money between people that are in different places of the world, it out of the blue becomes hard. Like there is like Forex there, you don't know how much the other party is going to receive and things like that. With the Lightning Network, you can do that instantaneous, final, and fast. So, like that may be something where we can bring a lot of value. And it seems that it's how it's being picked up nowadays.
Who is most likely to use that straight up? So you mentioned the case from a consumer app point of view where these agents go off and they can do virtually any errand, any sort of domestic errand for you, whether it's shopping or research, and you've got to pay for whatever. It can do that. But from an institutional or corporate commercial application point of view, are there any use cases that stand out?
So the first one that people seem most interested in is no chargeback. So every seller loses some amount of money through chargebacks. So the sellers say like, well, what I really like about Bitcoin payments is that they are final. Like whenever you give me money, you cannot take it back. So that's something that sellers love and they ask for. However, consumers don't like it that much. And people need to understand that for Visa, for example, refunds, they cost them like billions of dollars per year. Like it's a really big chunk of money, but it's a cost. So what they are seeing is that when we introduce credit and later settlement, our possibilities increase like by 100. And it's true that we lose like 2% on this thing, but it doesn't matter because it's so big the opportunity that it's worth to pay that cost. So most of Bitcoiners, when they try to solve the problem, they're like, okay, I have a solution for that. Let's have instant settlement and no credit. They say, well, yeah, it's true. Like I don't lose on chargebacks, but actually the amount of money that I move, it's reduced so much that the total amount of profit, it's lower. So that's something that I have seen many Bitcoiners struggling with. So this idea of, okay, yeah, it's a problem, that doesn't mean that you can change everything to solve that problem, because the important thing is at the end, it's more profit. So
it's when ideology meets consumer preferences that there's a little bit of a clash there, right? I mean, there's a reason why the current system is structured the way it is, and it's not always grift and corruption, but sometimes it's to facilitate consumer preferences in commerce as well. But it'll be interesting to see how that gets resolved with Bitcoin, because it's a challenge, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But we have seen, like, there's a company called Hilo or something like that, like 4 letters, it starts with H and it's like LO. I don't know the vowel in the middle. That they are like, they got bought for 200 million. And what they did was actually expose Shopify's stores to be able to accept Solana payments. So it worked. Like this idea of just saying, like, most of the people don't care what asset the payer is using. So this is really, really important. Like most of people are trying to sell Bitcoin as, okay, do you want to join the network? So buy Bitcoin and you will be able to pay to people who want Bitcoin. And the opposite, do you want to achieve it? So accept it and people with Bitcoin will be able to pay you. That's really, really hard to bootstrap. However, when I go to Japan, I use my credit card. I don't have yuans or yens. Like I just like it just happens, and they didn't have to convince both us to say like, well, we're going to use the same asset to transact to make sure that when I am traveling. So I think that with Bitcoin, if it happens, it should happen this way. So it's transparent for one of both parts. Like everyone receives what they want, and this is actually what the Lightning Network with Taproot assets is enabling.
I just wonder if there isn't one use case that Lightning in particular, Bitcoin can have some kind of advantage in. Then I'm like, well, why is it going to take market share in that space with agents?
So
Why would? Yeah, go on.
there are more things that are using from the Lightning Network. Like one was this like final settlement. And what I am, it's pretty clear about what are the trade-offs. So I'm not saying like, oh, it's wrong because of that, it's not going to happen. Like I'm just making really, really clear, like this is good, but then Bitcoiner says like, and because of that, it's going to take all. So like, no, nothing is going to take all. So the idea for why Bitcoin payments are going to increase is because the pie is going to become so bigger that you're going to see more movement. And then it's like, well, maybe market share, like we didn't move. Okay, yeah, but there's so much, the bigger is so bigger, the pie is so bigger that at the end, you just see more Bitcoin payments. So
could there be some kind of use case where one agent pays another agent in order to allow it to use consume resources that can't be refunded? Like, compute, for example, right? One agent says, talks to a data centers agent, hey, I need compute. Can you give me some compute? All right, this is what it costs, and you pay it, and then you use it. Once you go through a gate, there's no reversal, right? Because once you use compute, it's done, right?
yeah.
You can't give it back. So I wonder if there are consumables. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, people are reticent to pay for things that they don't know if it's going to work. So then you create this barrier, or is this worth it or not? And then what happens usually is reputation and escrow systems work really well in those environments. So it's like, well, there is no refund here, and it just moves. But another interesting case that it's totally aligned with what you were saying is the idea of final payments and micropayments. So for micropayments, it's true that most of the current networks are not good. Like that's something that they cannot replicate. And it may be worth for agents that increase velocity a lot of money to say like, well, we're going to settle really small amounts with many different people. So we cannot have escrow systems for all of them. So let's do something. Let's do like micropayments that have finance settlement. So even if one of them is scamming me, it's not a big problem. Like the reputation goes down and everything, but like even trying doesn't suppose like a big loss of value for any of both sides. But for micropayments with humans did not happen. And most of the people think that this is some kind of limitation of the system. So they say like, well, micropayments didn't happen because Visa is not good at them. People need to understand that these companies think the opposite side. If there is opportunity, they get good at. So if there was an opportunity on micropayments that was as big as credit cards, they could go and say like, well, let's build a system for that. So you don't think so?
No, I don't. I guess I have to confess my background. I did manage a payments project in the banking system a long time ago. And one of the first things that I wanted to understand was the value chain. Where does the cost accrue? And just to take money out of a cash point, what we call ATMs in Australia, there's like 5 different players, and each one takes a chunk out of that, right? There's the issuer, acquirer, switcher, and all that sort of stuff. And it's like everyone needs to wet their beak, as they say in The Godfather, right? And it's like, oh, I see. Now I understand. So there's an embedded cost in every single transaction, and that's just of a cash point withdrawal. And then there are point of sale transactions as well that have a different structure as well. So I think just that payment structure is prohibitive to micro payments.
Yes.
taking
So
hold.
in the current system, it's prohibitive. But if there was an opportunity of micropayments, other people would have solved that problem. So if they
You would think so, but there's okay. You would think so. In a free market, that would be the case. Perhaps with rapidly changing technology. I don't mean to be argumentative, but my experience was really frustrating about this. And there's almost kind of like a cartel of scale where you can't even up on. This was a long time ago, more than 15 years ago that I ran this project, but it essentially the scale required to even enter the game was prohibitive, and then the major players within that space were so big, they were essentially global operators, that there wasn't really all that much space and for you to be innovative on that front. And then the kind of pressure that they would put on merchants not to accept different types of payments and whatever, and accept the terminal. If you accept the terminal, it's on our terms and conditions and everything like that, right? It was really prohibitive. So I would say that my experience back then, and perhaps that's changed now with technological change in the landscape, it was totally understandable why this system was in place and why it had not changed for decades, because it was very lucrative for the industry participants, and I don't know if it was regulatory capture in Australia, but there were definitely economies of scale that made it prohibitive for people to be able to enter the market and experiment with any kind of innovation. So that's the only thing I would say is that, if we're talking free markets, sure, but markets are rarely free, especially really large ones in the absence of technological change that we have experienced since then. So maybe now it is more open to that. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to make that point.
For me, the take is like when I talk with Visa now, I see that they are interested in micropayments because they see an opportunity. So I don't think that they were like some kind of bad actor that's like, well, not micropayments, like we are against them or something. They just say like, there is some money there. It's not big enough. Like we just bring the Visa network to Vietnam and we make more money than if we enable like micropayments all over the world. So the money goes open the network in Vietnam or in more countries. Like let's just expand them. Let's see, like, can we think about like bringing contactless and changing the fee structure? And boom, like they make more money out of that from micropayments. So micropayments could happen, but it was just not that such a big opportunity. Now, if you talk to them, you can see that they say like, with these agents, it may happen. And I think that it has to do a lot with human psychology. So you can, if you ask any consumer, they will tell you what they believe that it's the truth. That it's like, every time that you send me a paywall of a newspaper, I don't want to enroll for a month. I don't want a subscription. If it was only $1 for this, then I would do it. If that was true. So I think that people are genuine. Like when they say this, they think that it's true. But it's really similar when you ask them, like, why don't you go to the gym? And they tell you, like, well, because I don't have time. So I go, okay, let's do something. I'm going to give you 1 extra hour per day. And still they would not go to the gym. They would do something else with that hour. So they are genuine. They're like, oh, it's because I don't have time. If only reality is that they spend the time on something else. So with micropayments, people think that. But I think that there's some kind of psychological barrier. If that worked, I think that the Stripe would already have some kind of extension where you put your credit card, you navigate around the website, you get charged once per month, and then they distribute the money without any problem. Like, and on aggregated, they would be like big enough to like go through the current systems. So that would not be such a big thing. But I think that reality is that the way to monetize users is in big chunks. So you make most of the money from a few number of users or with really, really high volume of amounts. So in reality, like the people that seem to win were the ones that say like, listen, I'm not going to charge you the micro thing that this costs. Just come here and stay time as much as you can. And I will think of ways of monetizing you later. So it's true. Like the publishing industry is really worried about this. So it's not a big problem. Like for them, it's like they saw their profits decimated in few years with the internet. But I don't know if when the consumer says like I would pay micropayments, they really mean it.
You're not sure about that, okay? Because I'm one of those people for the longest time that I actually I really believe that they would do that. And I was struggling to understand why, even at a premium, why these organizations won't allow customers to pay per article. So if you've gone to all that effort to write a feature article at, I don't know, one of the publications, and you're like going, well, this is going to be available to our subscribers, but if this is the only thing you want to read, okay, it's $1.50, right? And it's not really value, but if that's the only thing you want to read from the New Yorker and you have no interest, surely that's better than not capturing that. And it doesn't really take much of an effort to capture that, right? But I've never seen them try that. I've never seen an instance, a large-scale mainstream instance of an organization try that. Or if they did, it was a short space of time and they gave up on it very quickly. Perhaps the market wasn't ready for it at that time because, it took a long time. It probably took 10 years before the public was comfortable with e-commerce and paying online at scale.
So some companies that tried this, this one called like dropping or dropper, like it comes from drop, this idea of many drops make a lot of water. I don't think that they blew up ever. Like they are VC back. Like VCs really liked the idea for many, many years. They were like, we're pouring money into this because it sounds feasible. Like why wouldn't it? Now it looks like a bear trap, like it's something that you see and it's like, well, why didn't it happen? And there is even a company in Bitcoin called Mash that they tried this. I know now I am talking with multiple like publishers and think that it's related with selling data. This may be one of the use cases. Coming back to where we left the conversation about use cases for agents. Like the first one would be like e-commerce. Like I think that this idea of I am interacting with AI, they go and purchase. It's one of the biggest ones because the market is already there. Then there is selling data. Like most of these AIs, what they thrive on, it's on data. So that may be like the second usage of, you just pay the AI agent for creating a report about some stuff. And if they had a budget for doing that, they are able to come up with better reports. So if you are a VC, for example, and I want some study about how much other companies raised, this information exists. For example, you go to Crunchbase and you can get it there, but you need a subscription. So for first time, it may be this use case of, well, maybe the subscription doesn't make sense anymore because until now, the user was consuming it from my website. So the subscription was the best thing. Like I want you to spend as much time as you can here. And I will try to provide more value for expanding the business. Versus now that the AI agent says like, listen, you're not going to convince me. Like this is my task. Like this is what I am doing. So that's where it may start making sense. So e-commerce, selling data, and then already like access of software. I think that will be like the third one. And by software, I mean like other agents. So this idea of I am a software that knows, an agent that knows how to deal with analyzing data. There's another one that says like, I'm an agent that I'm really good at extracting data. There's another one that I'm really good at writing emails or posts about this. I am really good at marketing. I am really good at sales. I am really good at accounting. So this idea of the software, instead of saying something that you use, it's more of an interactive thing. So you just pay an agent for use software for you.
Could it be that these agents, one of the problems that I've heard people talk about is channels and liquidity in Lightning. Could it be that these agents eventually, they create the use case for enough channels and liquidity, the network to actually propagate so that more and more people around the world can access them when they're making payments, that there is enough liquidity around? Because my understanding it's kind of like this mycelial network of channels that a transaction needs to hop across to make it from one point to the other, right? And so could it be that some kind of industrial, institutional use case like autonomous agents using Bitcoin on the Lightning network develops the sort of network infrastructure of channels and liquidity for consumers to use, make it easier for consumers to end up using? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yes. So that's what I mean with the pie being bigger, making everything better. So this idea of if there is demand, people look at what consumers are demanding and try to benefit from it. So if there is demand for payments on the Lightning Network, that will help bringing liquidity there. Of course, it has to be matched at the offering price. So every time that I lock Bitcoin into a Lightning channel, it's Bitcoin that I cannot use for something else, for example, for leveraging, asking a credit somewhere else. So there is also this idea of, well, it's not for free. So, like it has to yield enough through payments. So these are all problems that are really, really hard. You can see that it starts to develop now, but still like the network is small enough that if you want liquidity right now, like if for any reason Saylor tomorrow says like, okay, now we are into payments, he could be one of the biggest providers of liquidity in the world. And I think that for the Lightning Network to work at the end, we will end up in a state that no one actor can bring enough liquidity. Like we just like match some kind of market thing, in the same that he cannot just be the only provider of selling Bitcoin.
I just want to expand on that. So that's a really interesting point, because for the longest time, people have been saying, well, there cannot be a yield on Bitcoin without some kind of fraudulent activity, right? And we lived through that in the last cycle, and there's a lot of truth to that. But if you did put up your Bitcoin as liquidity in a channel, and then I guess there's a risk attached to that as well, because you're underwriting the transactions, right? That's what essentially liquidity does. But then I guess the transaction fees are kind of like the yield or that liquidity in there. Could that be worthwhile for the risk that you actually put up your
So the idea is that it will, but something that we need to also take into account is that most of the commerce is not trustless. Like there is trust involved, and people are happy with it because it's the same idea as the refund in Visa.
Can you break that down for us? Trust and trustless commerce.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I understand.
So, for example, in the Lightning Network, when you make a payment, that's final. Like and the money had to move. So imagine if we have a channel, like the network has only one channel, and it's you and me. So it's not a network; it's only a channel. And the channel is 1 Bitcoin capacity. You have 0.7, I have 0.3. If I want to send you 0.5, I cannot, because I can only push 0.3 in your direction. If you want to send me like 0.8, you cannot. However, if I need to send you 0.5 and then you need to send me 0.8 later, like those two payments fail. But if we aggregate them, we say like, okay, I need to send you 5, you need to send me 8. Let's do something. Just send me 3 at 0.3. And then that happens in the channel. So in the Bitcoin network, liquidity needs to be there or the payment fails. So we cannot just batch this kind of payments. Like a payment in the Lightning Network actually is moving Bitcoin. However, most of the commerce is like, if we have a financial relationship, I just say like, listen, I need to give you 0.5. In 3 days, you have to give me 0.8. Can we wait and you just send me 0.3 at the end of the month? And most of the time, people say yes. They say yes because there is a cost. It's like, well, let's do something. Like, I'm not just waiting for you, because maybe with that 0.5, for me, there's a cost opportunity. But what if at the end of the month, we clear as if you owe me like 0.51? So, like I get some interest from the loan that I just did to you. So it's this idea of people trust usually other parts. And this is potentially good for commerce. Like it helps the market develop faster and growing more. So what Bitcoiner says is like, well, sometimes there is fraud there. So with our solution, we get rid of fraud. But I don't know if this is actually choking what makes markets grow faster. That it's this idea of credit. So with the Lightning Network, I think that this is something worth thinking about. Like if we want to compete with other payment methods, again, most of the time, what people would say is like, oh no, let me explain to you why these 0.5 and 0.8 cannot go through. It's because of the liquidity, blah, 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 blah. And people say like, I don't care. Like I trust him. Like at the end of the month, he's going to send me like 0.3. So why is this not possible with this solution? And if we are trying to do something as fast as with AI agents, so AI agents are going to happen, and they're happening already like really, really fast. So we cannot take 10 years to start bringing these ideas to the Lightning Network if we want to capture these things. Because again, like the Lightning Network is a really good solution for this problem. It needs some tweaks, but it fits well. However, most of the people are not willing to even change a bit. They say like, oh, no. Our principles are set. Money needs to move. And you're like, okay, then it may be bad for the Lightning Network because we may miss this opportunity.
Is there an opportunity to, or perhaps I should ask this way, are institutions more open to using Bitcoin on the Lightning Network through agents? Because the whole thing is a new technological area, and they're like, well, if we're doing this new thing, we might as well include Bitcoin in the scope of what we're investigating, even before a decision-making process. Because if you just tried to get them to accept Bitcoin, in their previous payment infrastructure, a lot of them are quite reluctant to do that, right? Because it's a really new thing. But if they're doing this entire new thing, is that easier for them to accept or at least consider Bitcoin?
I think that it is, but then there needs to be an intermediary. So that's why I think that we are not going to be the only ones to capture this. Like if we go to the institutions and tell them like this can go on Bitcoin, we lose. Like the people that are going to win are the ones that say stable coins, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. However, if Bitcoiners create the right tools for say like, listen, with this new thing, like payments can go with anything. Like you don't care. Like you're going to get whatever dollars you want in the bank. We are doing the bridging. Like we're going to hold stable coins. We're going to hold like Bitcoin with the Lightning Network and things like that. That may be the way. But if you go right now, I think that it's going to be really, really hard. Like most of the institutions are still at the beginning of this, saying like we accept Bitcoin as an asset. Most of them don't have it. So it's not as common. Like as long as there is a website, for example, that says Bitcoin treasuries, and then, I keep seeing like, oh, this company now has this amount. Okay, like this means that we are early. Like if we're celebrating this, who cares? Like, Can you imagine someone celebrating that someone else got a loan? Like, they just got a loan. Yeah, of course. Like everyone does.
Well, I can tell you one thing, that as someone who's responsible for propagating that sort of nonsense, I am starting to get a little bit weary of some of the more smaller announcements. Let's just say, right? And I did notice also, if you have a look at sort of some of the press release sites, they tend to come in batches. There are multiple companies who tend to release sort of copy pasta press releases that say, oh, we are considering it and we're going to buy up to 1 million. And you look them up and like their market cap is 500,000, right? And a lot of accounts just get sucked into posting about this. We don't say who they are, but even some of the smaller allocations, unless it's a company of note that's just pushing in the right direction, and we can expect something more. But if it's just a small company that it's got a market cap of 5 million and it's bought 500,000, that does not need. No one cares. Who are they? Like why, right? Or and look, in the last 12 months, I've pulled back on that a lot, but in the last cycle, that was a genuinely exciting thing, that anybody would accept Bitcoin for anything, really. Like you're selling a house and you're taking Bitcoin. That was news. But now I just see that people they use it as a promotional tool. And of course, there's always someone who gets sucked into that. But like if someone's selling a $30 million penthouse and they're going to accept Bitcoin, I'm posting that, right? Yeah. Because that's really exciting. Like for some reason, that just excites me. I can't give you an explanation for that. But if it's just a company that's going to buy 2 million Bitcoin, like I don't care about it anymore. But yeah, anyway, that's a nice.
And on Bitcoin principles, one of the best things is like when it happens peer to peer. But then when you see most of the other altcoins succeeding, it's because someone is making the bridge. So they go there and say like, listen, you are going to be able to use whatever you have, like Litecoin, to purchase anything. And you can see this, like one of the biggest usage of Bitcoin right now in commerce, it's this idea of gift cards. And they are doing exactly this bridge. They are saying like, I will take your Bitcoin and you will be able to spend it in those places.
Right. I'd love to do that. I'd love to do my regular shopping that way. But I think we are trailing the United States for these sorts of facilities. I'd love to be able to top up something and go shopping at Waitrose or Sainsbury's and do my shopping, buy my coffee or all that sort of stuff around. But unfortunately, we're so far behind. And in a lot of ways, like we need you guys to be the trailblazers such that we can't ignore it, and those systems are easily portable or replicable. At least you can set up the use cases there for us to actually copy over here. But yeah, it would be a good use case.
Something that I saw, like, this is more exploratory. Like, I don't know how close we are to this, but I usually try to see what worked before and how we can learn from that and maybe like utilize it. The Lightning Network is like decentralizing Visa. It's this idea of, for routing a payment, we don't need a centralized thing. Like, we can actually like do it without a central authority. The Visa, it's not decentralized, but it already has like this idea of merge, like acquirers and issuers. So, like, it's like not everyone has a Visa account. Nobody has a Visa account. It's like these institutions, the one that issue the card for you, or so, like the payment gets routed through the Visa network, but the money comes from different places. So people imagine that it's some kind of like super centralized thing. It's centralized, but you can see a bit of this fractal thing of how institutions can join and things like that. But the Visa network didn't only work because it allowed people to send money. Something that made it work really, really well was the idea that you were purchasing stuff with credit. And this is something that I haven't seen in the Lightning Network or in Bitcoin payments in general. And I think that it may be one of the biggest use cases. So this idea of you put Bitcoin in, what you are spending, it's a credit on that Bitcoin. And then you need to repay it every time. And if you don't, like, the Bitcoin gets taken. But the idea of Visa got big, not only because of the card that you can like put in one place, but because of the credit. I think that it's something that is highly like misunderstood. Like, people don't even talk about it. They think that they got big because it was accepted everywhere. But then if you see the distribution between debit and credit cards, like debit cards wasn't even a thing at the beginning. Like, it started with credit cards. And I don't know if there is a lesson here for Bitcoin companies that are trying to route payments with the idea of, okay, maybe they are not moving the asset. And when a payment network needs to bootstrap through credit, that, like, you have a collateral that you can always take.
One of the things that I guess I become conscious of when we have these conversations about different layers is, you mentioned, I think it's Lightspark, which is essentially a Lightning Network infrastructure provider for institutions, right? And so, like, if we're dependent on institutional adoption for Lightning to take off, doesn't that sort of mitigate one of the core principles of Bitcoin, which is, permissionless payment network? And I understand there are trade-offs as we have different layers, but I'd be interested in, I guess, getting your feedback on that. Like, what would you say to that?
First of all, that's a really good question, and I get it like multiple times because it's something that people are really interested in. But I would like people to understand that I want to use Bitcoin in the way that it was created for. That is this idea of in the fringe, like cyberpunk, etc. Bitcoin relies on proof of work for being defended from external actors. The fringe doesn't have enough power to defend the network. Like, these people need to understand it. There is no way that I am able to use Bitcoin as it is intended if only few people care. If only few people care, we're going to get crushed. Like, that's going to happen. So with Lightning, it's the same. Like, people imagine that, oh, no, I only want adoption if they are in the way that I want them to use it. So I would try people, like, there are two kinds of people, no? People like me that's like, I would like to live my life in a certain way. I am happy if other people don't want that. Like, I already accept it. For us, the best thing is for them to use the Lightning Network in the way that they want, as long as we can keep using it in the way we want. And actually, through their adoption, my life gets better. That's one. But then there is the other kind of Bitcoiner that says like, no. I am here for the revolution. I am not happy with people using Bitcoin. They need to understand it. And I want them to change everything. And they are really good at spotting why this is bad when someone is talking about changing the world through ecology or something like that. No, it's like, well, you're putting like a lot of weight on other people. Like, they are not your pawns to move. However, when it's about Bitcoin, they really say like, no, the only way for it to thrive is everyone will learn it, understand it. we're going to change the world, and Bitcoin just happens to be one of the tools. But the important thing is that the restructuration of human organization and cooperation around the world. Those people have a bigger problem than I do, because it's really hard to change reality, and more when people don't want to change it for you. So that would be my reply to this. So this idea of, well, if they adopt it, your life gets better, and this should make you happier. If you want them to change how they react or they act in the world, it's going to be hard.
I think when you come, and a lot of people do, they do come to Bitcoin with an ideology, or they adopt the ideology or the revolution, as you put it more aptly, and that's fine. I just think normies are normies for a reason. Like, the world is the way it is for a reason. It is catering to a certain human impulse and human needs. And I don't think that's going to change because of Bitcoin. But what I want Bitcoin to be is the option when I need it. And if other people, as you said, they use it in a different way, I don't care, as long as Bitcoin is my option when I need it. And if I need to do certain things to contribute to the development of Bitcoin to remain as an option when I need it, then, I'll do my best. But I don't like it when people proclaim to be freedom maximalists, and then they want to tell everybody else how to behave, and especially how to use their money. Right? That doesn't make sense to me.
And you can see this with a really good example, like with the Human Rights Foundation. Like, they are using Bitcoin as a tool, and they are helping like people to stay alive. Like, they are literally like saving lives with Bitcoin. The Human Rights Foundation can do that because Bitcoin is adopted somewhere else. Like, they could not just say like, okay, so let's do like HR coin, and with that, like, bootstrap it. No. Like, those people are able to save lives because there is a network effect somewhere else that are not using it for saving lives. Like,
and two competing use cases too. So we should make that point. So, people are disparaging those of us who are in it for number go up, store of value, but actually that enables the network to be alive and healthy and thriving for the people who need it as a means of exchange, because they are often the people who have, they don't really care about the volatility of it. They need to know that they get money out when they need to move across borders, for example, when their life is on the line, their family's life is on the line. If the option for them is, can I move even 50% of it or nothing, I'll take that chance. And sometimes they don't have that opportunity to do that. And so it's a really interesting contrast in use cases, but where actually the store of value reinforces the availability of Bitcoin as a means of exchange as well. So that's a really good point.
Because I am an entrepreneur, I have no money. So number goes up. It's not the thing that keeps me here, because I don't have any investment that will go up. But without number goes up, there is no Bitcoin. Like, the people that, like, I am here not for numbers goes up. Without number goes up, there is no Bitcoin for me, for being used in the case that I want. And I see that many Bitcoiners like miss that. It's like, no, I want, if there was a way to survive without number goes up, I wouldn't care which one to use. But I don't see any way to use Bitcoin in the way that I want, as a freedom technology, without numbers go up.
I think there's a luxury in being able to exercise that kind of snobbery when you're already sitting on 5,000% gains because you bought 10 years ago, right? And we know those people. Like, they post on the timeline that they no longer look at the price. Okay, you can afford to not look at the price. You probably own 10,000 Bitcoin. You bought them for pennies or whatever, whatever the case was. And, congratulations. But number go up for the rest of us is actually quite important. And it's really what drives adoption. Most people come into Bitcoin because of the hype, and then they learn more about it. That's certainly how I came into it. I bought Bitcoin as a trade. And then I learned more about everything else. And so I think that happens from cycle to cycle. But now I think I wonder what's going to drive adoption next. I suspect it's going to be institutional messaging, say financial institutions actually realizing they can make some money out of this and then selling it to their customers as a result of that.
And I think that that's like one of the most important things. Like the way that we have to win is by other people aligning their interests, not with our personal one, but their interest with something that it's aligned with ours. So it's not like BlackRock now cares about me, but what I want to make sure is that whatever BlackRock wants to do helps my life. Like that would be the best thing. And you can see this really easily. Like imagine that we are on the sea and I am just a passenger of a boat. So I have no power on where the boat goes. The best thing that I can do is make sure that the captain that can say where the boat goes decides to go to the same island I am interested in. So I want to go there because my wife is there. I cannot tell him like, please, let's go to that island that my wife is there. The captain doesn't care about that. But maybe he cares about parting. So I just tell him like, do you know where the best part in the world is? Happen to be in that island. And then out of the blue, all that boat, it's moving in the same direction that I am interested in, not for the same interests. So this is what many Bitcoiners are missing. That it's this idea of, oh, do you think that now BlackRock cares about freedom? No, they didn't care before. With ESG, didn't care about freedom, and they will never care about freedom. Like if you want them to care about freedom, the best way is for you to create BlackRock, and then you are at the top, and then you're able to decide where to go. Now, if you want to convince them, that's not going to happen. It doesn't matter how much education you do out there. That's not how the world works. But if we are able to align them so they point to the same direction that we are interested in for different reasons, makes our lives all better.
Sure. I mean, it's the same thing with people talking down the Bitcoin ETFs. It's like, listen, if you're a 65, 75, 85-year-old and that's the only way that you feel confident gaining exposure to Bitcoin, then I want you to do that. I'm not I'm not going to badger you to hold your own keys if you don't have the confidence to do that, or you don't have the mental faculties to do that, and you're worried about self-custody. I had a friend who did message me, and he was extremely concerned about self-custody because he had health issues. He passed away within a couple of months. I'm not sure if he ever resolved that, right? These are real issues. And so it's all very well and good if you've got a good 30, 40, 50 years ahead of yourself, but you've got to put yourself into other people's shoes about what they're capable of in their life circumstances and whether or not they're able to engage with Bitcoin in the same way that you are, whether it's even possible, let alone can they manage the risks of doing so. I think we have not enough understanding from some people. The most obnoxious tend to get a lot of attention in this space because it draws attention, and in the conversation they tend to lead the conversation as a result, unfortunately. But yeah, so I agree with that. I guess my mind is drifting now towards I'm looking towards the future, and whenever I hear about a new AI development, I'm like, okay, well, how can I use it? And so when do you think, or how do you think I will be able to use Bitcoin through an autonomous agent? What do you think would be the first use case that will hit the ground for the consumer and really take space?
So the first one, it's actually like e-commerce. So this idea that from your Cloud app or your editor, if you're a programmer, or from whatever app you are in, like your Apple Intelligence, you are going to be able to just top up your Bitcoin somewhere. And then someone is going to do that conversion from you. So you will just say like, okay, I want to purchase these Nike shoes, and the Nike shoes just appear in your door. So this is something that we already like. It's already in production right now. Like,
so rather than look for the shoes on a particular store, I will ask the autonomous agent to find me the particular shoes that I'm looking for, and it could filter by price, by proximity, by shipping costs, and then make the payment and buy it for me. Is that how you're seeing it? That would be really good. Because that would be fantastic. Yeah.
And this is happening, like, it's happening pretty quickly. So it's this idea of right now, for you to go to a particular store, you're thinking about the browser. You open the browser and then you go there. And then many times you can see some aggregators. So for example, if you want to purchase a flight, you go to Expedia and then you go there and look for a flight. But actually many people do multiple. So even the aggregator, it's not enough. They say, like, I want to look into Skyscanner and Expedia because the prices are different. So that's going to be done all from the same interface. Like, you're going to ask Apple Intelligence, I want a flight. And you're going to interact it in the same way as if you and me did a flight together. You would talk to me like, no, Monday, no. Like, I only fly on Thursday. Is that good? And then you would go into this like back and forth, and it will literally be how you will interact with AI.
That's fantastic. If that can do that, if an autonomous agent can do that across multiple providers, then there comes an issue of whether or not you trust it enough to find you the best solution. Is it really the only flight available for those times at that cost with these flyers or carriers, I should say? And that's going to be interesting because when ChatGPT first launched, there were obviously some glaring errors in the results and hallucinations and everything else. I'm not sure that they've eliminated those completely. I think that's still an issue, but it's so much better right now. Like, I'm getting far fewer dead links and hallucinations in the results. So I can only imagine in the next 2 years what kind of innovations and improvements they're going to ship. I think shopping and e-commerce would be fantastic. You know what? For some reason, when I first came across autonomous agents with Bitcoin, I had this image of autonomous agents basically dealing with one another rather than any kind of consumer interfacing app. Are there kind of any sort of industrial scale applications in that regard, where it's just AI agents talking to AI agents and doing these mass transactions or verifications? Is Bitcoin able to be used, at the cost of a few sats or whatever it might be for validation, for sort of gatekeeping, digital gatekeeping, for access to data, access to websites, access to whatever else it might be? Are there those sorts of use cases that are more industrial and institutional in nature?
They do exist, but until now, and even right now, the idea of an autonomous agent paying for stuff, it's not such a good idea. Without keeping the human in the loop, I would not give my AI agent my credit card.
What about in a closed system, though, where you might have an industry that develops some kind of standard or protocol, and they're like, okay, this is something that we do between each other, and it might well be like, data batching or, netting off transactions or whatever it might be, but there's an issue of maybe validation or, ID, that sort of thing, to make sure that there's nothing getting in between.
So right now that exists, and what usually happened was that I just put my credit card on file. So it looks like the agent is paying, but the agent doesn't need to make any payment. Like, I get just metered, and then at the end of the month they charge me. So when the thing starts to have a lot of sense, it's when the agent is actually using something that you didn't know that you had to use before, so they don't have your credit card. That's why e-commerce is such a good use case, because you don't purchase only from Amazon. You purchase from thousands of stores in the world that you didn't have any interaction with them before. The other one could be getting data. Getting data, like when you go to a website, you don't go only to one website per month. You visit like many, and many of them are different, and you only do like once per time. So it's when it makes sense for an AI agent to say, like, well, I want to request information about this website, and then I pay for it. This is something that publishers are looking into, and there is already a protocol for that it's called L402. L402 is a protocol for payments over HTTP, that it's like the protocol that enabled the internet, or how most of the packages on the internet flow. For people, payments on the internet look like a solved problem because they use the browser. And they say, well, I put my credit card in the browser and it works. However, most of these agents are not using browsers. They are using APIs. So they are directly calling services with this under the hood protocol that is called HTTP. And the committee of HTTP, actually in the 90s, had the idea that at some point people would need to pay over HTTP. So they even put an error code for it, that it's the 402. However, what happened was that Visa already had like a lot of distribution. People were centralizing the usage of internet over the browser, so they were able to capture it there, and then they built like all payments over the internet now are tied to the browser. And this is the first time that it makes sense to split it and make it over HTTP. At Lightning Labs, they created what is called the L402 protocol that was tied to the Lightning Network. So it was a way of machines to request payments only for Lightning Network payments, so through an invoice. And also, they found the problem of, well, usually when there is a payment, you need to authenticate. So they blend in, they put inside the protocol authentication tool with something called macaroons. That is a really good solution, but it's blending together too many things. So when I left Lightning Labs, I took that protocol and basically give it like a new paint, like a new reborn. So now there's like what I would call L402 V2 that works. It's independent of any payment method, so it works with credit cards, with any crypto, with Lightning, and whatever it's to come. Like Spark and Arc will blend in without any problem. Works with eCash, that may be a really good solution for AI agents. And also it's independent of any auth method. So, like people are able to integrate it without having to change their full backend services. That was one of the main problems before. So for industry right now, this idea of agents paying agents does not happen. Like we are not at the point where this is happening. If you even ask people who are doing AI agents, they are doing vertical ones. So they say like, I wrote my own that uses my tools. So there is no interaction with third parties that are new, and there is no interaction with third parties that involves a payment. I think that we are still like 6 to 9 months to start seeing things that are not e-commerce. The thing
that's a short period of time, though. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't regard that as a too far into the distance. That's kind of like current projects, really.
So what people need to understand with AI, like I know many people who are really, really critics, and it's going to go faster than graphics. So everyone remembers like the Game Boy 1989, green screen, almost no lines, really like kind of bad. And then less than 15 years later, or like let's say like 17 years later, we had the PSP. That was a supportable console that could do quite a lot. And if we wanted, it was expensive, but we could have something like a Steam Deck that is like the best now in graphics for hand machines. That it's basically a computer. Like you can have like PlayStation 4 kind of graphics while you are sitting in the sofa with no TV. So that happened really, really quickly. And if someone lived in the 90s, if they are into video games, you can see like the beginning of the 90s to the end of the 90s. It's like day and night. Like it looks like it's not possible that we went from that technology to the other. We went to from Tetris to Final Fantasy VII. And you're like, okay, like this is impressive. With AI, it's the same. Like what people do is like they see it today and it's like, oh, it fails like this. We're in 1991. And it's going faster than graphics itself.
I just had that conversation with some people, and the first things that they said were essentially like they're not Luddites, but they're very much normies, right? And the first thing they said were objections that were kind of what I raised, the issues like hallucinations and the dead links, but like there's actually there's such powerful tools that you've got to be able to see through that. Like that's something that can be resolved very, very quickly. And within 2 years, we've already come so far with AI agents that you can just imagine in another 2 years what's going to happen. It's exponential growth, and I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed, especially with what a platform like Replit can do for someone like me. I've got a business background. I'm not a developer, but I've actually having looked at some of the videos that they've put out as tutorials. I'm like, oh, I've got some pretty simple apps in mind that I could I think I could develop with this with a fair amount of confidence that it could work. And so that's just, I would have had to have paid a developer probably $5,000 or $10,000 to do that, collaborate with them over how many weeks, look through, give them feedback, iterate, whereas I could probably do all of that now in a weekend on my own with a platform. That's just remarkable. And I think there's so much that's possible in this space that we've barely scratched the surface of. And if you're saying that, agent to agent is before we'll even see like a good use case, 6 to 9 months, that's not a long time for me. I just think that that's in the pipeline. And as soon as that comes out, I think people will start having the imagination to envision what else they can do with it. So like, I'm not at the cutting edge of this technology, but as soon as I saw something like Replit or ChatGPT that came out, I immediately understood how that could help some of the things that I'm doing. It's just a question of being able to put it all together.
And something that makes me really bullish in this space and why I am working on payments for AI agents is that usually like people like you that are able to see Replit and project your creativity, that's not the norm. Like usually it takes a bit longer. Like we think that things are going to happen really, really quickly, and in reality it takes always longer. No? So the adoption of the internet at the beginning, like you can imagine like the people that did it, they thought like, okay, so this is it. Like we are going to be able to communicate anything over the internet. But then you have to tell this to people, and then you show them like you having a video call or at the beginning a call, and it's like, oh yeah, like the phone. And you're like, no, this can be any kind of data. It's like, well, what do you mean any kind of data? And then you show a video call, and it's like, whoa, like it's for video. And you're like, no, it's not for that. Like it can be anything. Like this could represent, and people are not able to project. So like represent what? With AI, it's the same. But what makes me bullish is the idea that I think that the main users of AI and AI agents will be other AI agents. So we are not going to see this kind of lagging adoption, because it's going to be literally like if I am able to create an AI agent that can use other AI agents, I am able to replicate these to billions in no time. So it's going to look really, really differently than most of the other adoption curves in the world or how technology usually gets adopted. This idea that we are automating intelligence. So most of the people, what they imagine is like, okay, so I know how to do X, and usually I have to interact with other people for what comes after and before. And now with AI, I'm able to expand it because I am using the intelligence of the machine for doing what comes after. So I am empowered. And also whatever goes before, I am able to, use AI for that. But they need to understand that the person that was before and after them, it's seeing the same pattern. It's like, well, I only knew to do what comes after X, but now with the AI, I'm able to do the previous part too. So we have this idea of the tool that uses itself. So it's this idea of this is not just a tool that, we need to train everyone to use, but we are going to be able to project just what we want, and it's going to be able to have like plans that we approve. So I am like really, really excited for that goal that it's coming. And that means a lot of things for job market. I think that there is going to be like more jobs than ever. So I wouldn't worry about me not having to work. For sure, I would worry a bit of me doing the same work that I've been doing. That's something that I would care about. But it has a lot of implications for Bitcoin because most of the people now are doing jobs that can be automated. That means that they can become cheaper. So labor may get a hit on their cost in the market. Like we may not be able to sell our time of working as expensive as we did before. However, capital, it's not going away. Like markets are going to make machines more useful. Like that's not something that it's going away. Like we're not going to live in this idea of there's a machine that we just ask to organize the full society and, like it just knows what to do. Markets are going to still be like an important piece there. So capital is really important, and Bitcoin may help people protect that capital quite a lot.
I think you're more optimistic on the jobs front than I am. I think the situation is pretty close to help us because anything intellectual will soon be done by by AI. At least anything that relies on a body of knowledge, like lawyer, accountant, whatever, and then you're sort of dispensing fairly structured, standardized expertise for the most part. And it's that last, I don't know, 5, 10, 15% that requires specialized knowledge to be able to be creative enough. And, that's most lawyers gone, most accountants gone. I was having this discussion the other day. I could pretty much know that if I've got a legal problem or an accounting problem, I can now inquire with ChatGPT and get about 80% of the advice that I'm going to get from my first 2 or 3 meetings with an accountant. And so suddenly I'm able to go up that curve of knowledge acquisition that I would have had to have paid, 4, 5, 600 an hour or whatever it was to an accountant. And now I'm like, I already know that. Let's get to the crux of what the solution is going to be. And so as a result, there's less demand, less billable hours, fewer billable hours. And so you take that down, most of the corporate structure is filled with, people doing PowerPoint and Excel. They have different job titles, but that's their job, PowerPoint and Excel. Those jobs are mostly gone. If you have 10 of them, you'll probably have 2 now. And so I'm on the intellectual front, sort of the white collar front, I'm quite pessimistic. And then on the labor front, as you mentioned, with robotics, I am astounded at the advancement in robotics in just 2 or 3 years. I mean, they're dancing and twerking and shit like that. It's like, and the dexterity in how they're able to handle, like they trained one to do, I don't know, it's not the most finessed style of cooking, but to do like a stir fry wok. And the technique was just absolutely perfect. And so I'm wondering, if factories and kitchens, to some extent, at least kitchens at scale, are going to be populated by these robots that are then powered by intelligent or autonomous agents, then what is there left to do for people who rely on their labor? And so that's going to collapse the labor market as well. So where are people going to go if you can't rely on structured white collar work, which is most of the market, and you can't rely on, I guess, manufacturing style labor? What is left for everybody else to do? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. What's your view?
That's a big problem. And I think that may play out that way. The only thing that I think that it's where I disagree with most of the people is this idea of, I think that the demand for intelligence and tasks are like almost infinite. So it's true, like you said, like, well, there are going to be more machines doing more than ever. It's like, okay, so there is a constraint of how many machines we can do per year. So the reality is, like, if you gave me more machines, would I be able to do more? And I will say yes. And I was like, well, when we run out of machines, we need to start hiring people for doing these other things that still we want to do. And what I usually say is, like, yeah, most of the jobs, for example, like lawyers, you could say like what they are doing can be done better by some other lawyer from Harvard. And you're like, yeah, but the lawyer from Harvard is already taken. So then you have to go with the second best thing. And then, like, it keeps going to marginal, like, as long as there is value on bringing someone else, so the next lawyer will have a job. And I think that with machines is going to happen. So I have no doubt that in 5 to 7 years, like that's my prediction, whatever I do today that it's intellectual work is going to be done faster, cheaper, and better by a machine. Like that's my bet. Like I am betting for that goal where in 7 years, like right now, people call me for problem solving skills. That's gone. Like faster, better, and cheaper. Like there is nothing that I can do against that. But there's going to be some constraint on how much. Like the best problems are going to be for the machines. But at the end, it's like, well, Jordi, we still need more problem solving. We are not going to give you the most important one because machine doesn't bring it better. But still, can you take care of this other one that, like, we are already, like, up to max with the machine. So can you solve this other? This may not play out this well. And there is also the problem of the whole human cooperation structure. It's based on the value that you provide in the labor market, because this is something that we have that other people cannot utilize without our consent. So we actually go and say, like, okay, this is how we cooperate. If for any reason there is a hard break there, this is going to be like the biggest problem that humans ever had to solve on cooperation basis. Like, this is going to disrupt everything, and you can see that people are not thinking about this stuff much.
Yeah, and like we were talking with my producer. He's much more on the libertarian side than I am, and I'm of the view that most political ideologies, they break down at some point in the scale, whether it's at the small scale or the large scale, they break down. The ideology does. It doesn't mean they don't have any merit at all along that spectrum. But, if I'm giving one person advice, I would very much lean on them to show, demonstrate initiative, upskill, be enterprising and whatnot. But, in a country like the UK, what is it, 55, 65 million or whatever, you're not going to have 65 million entrepreneurs, right? Because there's a limited market, there's limited ability. Not everyone's capable of the same things. And so if one person's unemployed, that's that person's problem. But if millions are unemployed, you've got a national crisis. That's a failure in policy. It's not a failure of individuals, because what it says is that policy has failed to create a society in which people can find meaningful employment. I'm not sure what the answer is there, like with considering the technological wave that's about to hit the labor market, right? I don't know what the answer is in that regard. I'm excited by the future, but I'm terrified for other people about what it may hold for them.
You can see something similar that happened with automation in agrarian agriculture, like societies. So usually there was like 100 families working on the field, and then there was a production of food, whatever it was. Then we put machinery in. We only need 20 families instead of 100. We produce more food than ever. That's one of the keys. Like, we produce more food than ever, but there are 80 families that are starving. Like, that was the output for a few years. The good thing is that it takes people a lot of time to understand. Like, the production of machinery was not that fast, so it didn't happen in 6 months. The adoption of this wasn't that fast, so like, people was displaced and they were able to find. But even so, like, it was hard for many families. Now it's going to be that to the power of 100. So yeah, I what may save us, it's actually like charity. They call it now like UBI. So it's this idea of you just give people money and then they spend it. But after all, what you're saying is like, there are going to be some people producing that they are going to give it away for whatever other people are getting for free. That it's this UBI money. If we get enough production, we may be able to hand out what people need without any problem. But we will see how it works for more stuff, like luxury stuff that goes beyond what people need. And also, people seem to not be trained for not doing anything. Like, most of the people imagine that what they need is not doing anything. They say like, wow, my life would be so much better if I didn't have to work. I have so much things in my mind. You see what happens when people win the lottery. Like, you give them like extra freedom to interact with resources in the world. And most of them, they fail because they say like, well, I don't know how to put boundaries. So, like, I don't have a routine. And then I wake up like stressed, and then I just eat a lot of food, and then I drink a lot, and it's already 12 and I keep drinking because I waste another day. So I need to see how society and individuals go through this, because most of them, again, like, they, with all the good intention on the world, say like, wow, it's great to don't have to work. I don't think that they know how a day without working looks like, or every day.
Purpose. Yeah, you definitely need to wake up to some kind of purpose. And how people replace work if they don't need to work, if there isn't any work. I'm not sure how they do that. I'm not sure how that gets financed. I'm not sure what that means for the economy when a whole bunch of demand just disappears because people don't have the salaries that they were generating in the last century or so. These are all questions that are up in the air. I don't see any good answers yet. UBI is like, here's some soap and some food, pleb, and shut the fuck up, basically. I don't think that's a satisfactory answer because, okay, people may not starve, but that's not going to be a bulwark against tearing the social fabric.
But also, like UBI, so people don't think about money as a system. They think about what money is for them. And for them, it's like, if I have it in my account, I give it away and they give me the things that I want. So then that's why people don't understand like hyperinflation and things like that, because they just say like, why are they asking for more? Yeah, I have more in the bank, but I want to spend it on other things. So why are they asking for more? Like they are bad or something? Because it's really hard, because they always relate it with money in a unidirectional way. So with UBI, they imagine the same. They say like, well, we're going to give this to people and people are going to be able to go and purchase the stuff. But they don't understand like, well, people are accepting that because it's hidden theft. So what they say is like, well, I need to cooperate with other producers. So I'm going to produce some stuff and other people are going to produce other stuff. And what we're able to do is like, well, they are using dollars for transacting. If we hide dollars in other people's pockets, the producers are not going to be able to differentiate which ones come from, yeah, I need those dollars because I am cooperating versus I am giving my thing away for free. So if it's a small scale, it seems to work. People say like, wow, this is amazing. Like there is like welfare program. Everyone is working for money. I give someone like $1 million and they are able to live in that society without any problem. Good. But in reality is if there is almost no need to cooperation with other producers, or the other producers are really, really little, they may ask themselves like, why would I accept those dollars when I can see that it's clearly stealing from me? Like most of the things that I am producing, I am giving them away for dollars. That then what? I need to spend with the little producers that are producing. Why can't we interact with another way? Like I'm going to talk with the other producers and say, like, guys, we're being scammed. Like, can we change the currency that we use for transact between producers? Because there is a lot of people who are not producing. And these things are hard to grasp for people because, again, they imagine the system is working. I just take one and give them money. So now there are many people that need it. I just give them money. I don't know how it's going to play out, but it's one of the biggest challenges. And Bitcoin can help here. Like this idea of having capital in a world where your labor is not able to help you achieve your financial, your financial goals, something that preserves your capital. Like now, maybe like one of the best moments to do it. And I am so concerned about this that it's actually something that it's behind my mind every day. Like I am not producing the max that I can because I am an entrepreneur. So it's like, well, for me, the safest thing would be now to go to work to Google and purchase Bitcoin. But instead, I am trying to change the world. But there is this idea of, well, I don't know, the miscalculation of getting into that era where my skills are not worth that much anymore and not having Bitcoin. That's something that I would not like to find out anytime soon.
Yeah, and it's I've had that thought many times. Like I pretty much ran my career into a brick wall just when COVID struck. And I was sleepwalking for a while in my career, to be honest, and I hadn't realized it. And COVID sort of brought it all to a crashing halt. And I hadn't realized the predicament I was in until COVID. And I got lucky with I started my account that grew enormously. But I often just tell myself how lucky I got in order to be able to, that I've established this account, this audience, and I'm able to do wonderful things like talk to people like you about at Bitcoin and get thoroughly immersed in Bitcoin and, and invest in Bitcoin as well. Otherwise, I'm not sure. Like I'm a business person, right? I put ideas together, come up with ideas, put things together. That's what I did in the corporate world. And okay, so a lot of this technology is going to take away jobs. And so someone like me might be able to feel empowered with new platforms like, Replit and whatnot that enable me to build things that I would otherwise have required so much more capital to hire other people. But I look around the world and I'm like, how am I going to enjoy my money when everyone else is struggling? I don't want a world that's like that either. So I'm searching for answers that I have not been able to find for almost 2 years now, when when the reality of AI really slapped me in the face, and I said, "Oh my God, it's actually going to happen now." All those jobs that I aspired for as a graduate from university, that I sacrificed 6-7 years of my youth to get the degree, to go to a bank and get a good job there. Those jobs are not really going to be available. We had a graduate intake at our bank of about 300. They don't need 300 graduates anymore. They probably take 20 or 30 graduates, and they'll all be sons and daughters of directors at the bank already, right? So I don't know what people like me, who are now graduating between 22 and 25, I don't know what they're going to do. I'm really worried for them, and I'm really worried for people who rely on their labor as well, because those robots are bloody impressive, and when you power them up with these ever improving artificial intelligence agents, it's game over. and really, what I guess what it does is it makes humanity face itself, right? Because we've always thought, oh yeah, capitalism is a cooperation of individuals with confluence of interests, and okay, let's see how cooperative we really are. If we can solve this problem, I think.
And even in economics, most of the stuff that we have, it's based on there is only one kind of intelligent actor with some sort of limitations,
and a rational one. Yeah,
it's humans.
Yeah.
And then, for example, why do I need cooperation? The reality that I need cooperation is because I have some limitations, from knowledge to computation to space related, or where I can be. So what yields the best output for me is cooperate with others. So I am not able, for example, to take your brain and use it at will for computing stuff. So I need to somehow say, like, sorry, can you help me with fishing? I promise you, like, if you go out fishing and bring it back, I will give you, like, I don't know, like one of my ships. With machines, like, all the economics that we have are based on this idea of we have different intelligent actors and they trade and interact. However, machines have some fundamental differences. A really simple one that never faced economics before is this idea of, I am an economic agent. I am able to see one opportunity, and then it gets saturated, like, or I saturate the opportunity, like I'm able to take it all, or I am able to take as much as I can, and then other people need to realize about that opportunity and go and start saturating. Machines don't have this problem. Like, if I am able to understand it, I am able to replicate 1 billion out of me without any problem to start consuming. So that's one of the first differences. The second one is this idea of machines. We can see them like different machines, but for first time in the history of humanity or economics that we have studied, we have the idea of these are two economic actors, but the resources of this one can be totally absorbed by one of the individuals. So what I say, like, I cannot take your brain and operate it. Like, your brain, it's your resources. So I can only use language with you, and then you go out and fish. But I can only interact with you through language, and those are your resources, not mine. With machines, we can have like two machines that are separate, and they are clearly like different economic agents. But one can purchase the other one and say, like, okay, now those GPUs, I don't want the second agent. I want the power of the second agent. So give me their GPUs, and they are going to start computing as part of me. So my computing power as an agent increases. It's not like two cooperating. Like, I can buy it, and that never happens before. And then in economics, there is no way to model this stuff because it just never happened. I talked with some economists, and they are not even thinking about this stuff yet. But I think that this is like one of the most fundamental challenges in the world. They are trying to say, like, okay, we have these agents. Let's take them like people. And it's a good first step because they are going to be able to do everything people do. But I would also like to explore a bit more. What are the fundamentals that we took for granted, like the axioms of economics? Like this idea that we need to cooperate because we are two different entities. How does it change when we're in an economy where the economic actors can merge, and they are really merging. They are not cooperating. They merge. So there is a lot of things in many fields that need to, like, they are going to be revolutionized. And
That's
we are only talking
interesting.
about 3 to 5 years.
Has anyone, I mean, I'm sure they have, but I guess I ask if you could enlighten us, like, what have the simulations shown these agents doing?
So the problem with simulations is that you have to kind of program what are the axioms of that simulation. And then for economics, that's why they work so badly. Because in reality, like, people change. Like, they don't have a normal thing. And how do they change? The reality is that we don't know. Like, I'm not able to pick your brain and just predict. So I need to model it, and then I run the simulation, and then it's like, damn it, you are acting wrong. Like, this is not how my simulation works. So right now, most of the simulations that people are doing are really shallow, let's say. Like, I don't trust any of the results because it's like, well, you're putting a lot of axioms that they do not hold in reality. And I don't think that we're going to be able to simulate this. I think that we're going to have to run it. And at least, like, the first step would be things from first principles. What is different?
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, that's one of the limitations of any kind of scientific testing, is that you've got to place limitations on what the variables are, right? Otherwise, it's difficult to have any kind of controlled environment. I'm just thinking, like, does a company like Amazon have enough data on human behavior to be able to, like, train their models and then simulate other scenarios, scenarios that are independent of the data that they have? Or is that even worthwhile? I don't know, because they essentially have data on the entire human population, right? And so I wonder, is that enough information for modeling these autonomous agents? And would that simulation be predictive of human behavior in novel environments? I'm just thinking out loud. I guess it'd be quite an advantage to have, wouldn't it? Because I imagine Google would have the advantage on sort of information search and that kind of behavior, perhaps even more, because they monitor most of the web. But specifically for e-commerce, I don't imagine anyone would have more data than Amazon, right?
Yes. The big limitation that they have, it's, for example, e-commerce, it's missing a big part, that it's advertisement, that it's the one that Google has. And then Google, actually, it's better positioned because things like the browser that you use, it's Google usually, like it's Chrome. So they don't know exactly what you're buying, but they are able to see that after this ad, you went to Amazon. So they are able to, like, through metadata, kind of guess effectivity and things like that. But we wrote a paper about this called Beyond the Sum, how markets can make AI more intelligent, or how AI agents can, like, leverage markets to achieve things that by themselves would not be able to. And it's the same idea of New York. No, New York, nobody planned it. Like, it's just like through the interaction of millions of people around the world, we have, like, a city like New York. That sounds crazy. Like, the idea that you can just purchase a sofa and put it in your home. So how does that even happen? And people see, like, take it for granted. Like, you just go there, take the sofa, you give them money. But that sofa needs to be produced. Like, there is a lot of things that need to happen for that to you to have it. And we have both. Like, what's the limiting factor of agents to interact in the economy right now? Plus, what we think that are the biggest challenges of how markets may change now that we have these intelligent agents. And if you want to go a bit more sci-fi, that it's then like 10 to 15 years, for me, like, all these things were only in the movies. You can see it in sci-fi books and things like that. But if you watch Star Wars, there are robots there. And then you say, like, whose robot is this? It's like, no, this is nobody's robot. Like, this it's a robot in its own. Humans, like, we don't think like that. Like, most of the stuff, we gave it some property because they are not able to be intelligent to interact with us by themselves. So we say, like, well, this is a resource because they are not able to interact in a way that we can communicate with. We just see it as a resource. these robots, I don't know if I'm sure that at some point they're going to start being more and more autonomous. And there is the famous example of an Uber car that owns itself. It's no one's corporation. Someone built it and said, like, well, this is not mine now. Maybe like it just give me like part of the shares or something. But people can call it with an app, something like Uber. You're able to pay it. It transports you to some place, and then with that money, it's able to sustain it. It's able to pay for insurance. It's able to pay for oil and mechanic parts, and it just keeps going. At the beginning, it's really hard for me to imagine how we end in that state, because it's like, well, if I am the one that created the robot, I am the owner of the robot. But I don't know. I think that people are going to try to create humanoids and say like, no, this is not my humanoid. This is a humanoid on itself. And then what happens if that robot is the one that makes the Uber car and things like that? All these things are things that for movies, but they are not anymore. Like, I think that people should start thinking on how AI can literally like change the reality around us, and things that were supposed to be only in movies, how may play out in reality.
Well, it's really interesting that you made that point, because we already have legal entities that are not owned by anybody, right? Like a trust is not owned by anybody. You have beneficiaries of a trust, you have trustees on the board of a trust, but they don't own the trust. The trust is its own entity. At least I'm pretty sure that's how it works in Australia and the UK, right? And perhaps in the United States it might be different. So if you have a trust, which is its own entity, in a jurisdiction that's non-domiciled jurisdiction, for example, it's just an international trust that owns a robot, but manifests a robot into reality, let's just say, right? What happens then?
And remember, like trust and things like that, they are abstract things, and they don't represent any kind of intelligence. So at the end, a trust has to be managed somehow. It cannot manage its resources. Someone has to trigger it. So they tell you like, this is not me. But in reality, at the end, there is someone who triggers, like, should I purchase this building or should I just invest in a new airport in Mexico? With AI, there is not going to be humans behind it. Like the intelligence, it's literally there. Like it's going to be itself manifesting into reality what it wants to do. And then this changes like all the landscape that we have. So the most non-personal thing that we ever had was trusts and then corporations. This idea like, no, this is a corporation. But if you look into it, like corporations are still projecting. So if Tim Cook from Amazon goes into a party and gives a speech, there's like, oh, the person talking is Tim Cook from Apple. If instead of that he goes into a rant about crazy stuff, it's like, well, this doesn't represent Apple. Like this is him going crazy. Like now, like I don't know, he went like full homophobic. Like why did he do that? Like that's not Apple. That's the person. Like how is that possible? Like what makes it change? And in Reddit, it's us projecting. When he says something that we attribute to Amazon or makes sense to attribute to Amazon, we say like, well, it's him talking in name of Apple. But if he goes crazy, we say like, well, wait a second, like Apple could not say that, so it's him. So with AI, like it's going to be totally different because there is no person representing this abstract thing. It's actually the thing itself. So it's really, really different. Like I think that we cannot map it with anything that we have ever seen because of that.
Really? Okay. It will be interesting to see if they do give autonomous agents different legal standing or different legal classification from an automobile, any other property, because ultimately someone has to create that, someone has to order it, procure it, and deploy it. Along this value chain, there has to be some kind of legal responsibility. Otherwise, they don't manifest themselves. And perhaps even if they do manifest themselves, there has to be a root. There has to be a root, or a source of origin.
Yeah, but
I
what I
saw
don't
your
know.
eyes light up when I said that. So I'm wondering what you've seen in the sandbox.
But there is also this idea of you should be able to trace that route. So I can make like I can tell you like there are going to be people that say like no, I want to create a humanoid that I don't own. Like I want, and they are going to put all their effort in doing that because that's something that many people want.
I know, but even the child that you have, you're legally responsible for until they're of age, right?
Yes, but the thing is like I'm going to create the robot, the humanoid that I say that I don't own, and just like Jordi, you own this robot. It's like okay, I don't think so, but you're going to tell me this, and then my robot at nights it's going to do something, and one day it's going to drop it somewhere, and we're going to leave. And then you are not able to trace it to my robot to me anymore. So he just created some kind of arachnid robot that now lives in a city. And it's like, who's this? It was like, I don't know. Like someone created it. We know that, but we don't know who. And, so the idea of, that's why I said when people talk about the Uber that owns itself, for me, it's hard to imagine how we end up there. Because we say, well, someone creates the Uber, so I just link it. But I can see things that are not an Uber, that it's hard.
Is it just an abstract idea, or is there an Uber that has no owner? How does that work? The car was created.
So imagine this idea of like someone dropping robots that are able to assemble something.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
And they assemble, it's like, who is this? And it's like, oh no, it's whoever makes it.
There's a source, right? The source has to be the origin.
Yeah, but you may not be able to follow, like, to see who created it.
Yeah. Yeah. And gee, okay. All right. We're getting into like robotic conception. I mean, they're fascinating conceptual ideas, aren't they? Because the first question is, does the existing legal framework apply to these agents and the robotics? Are they property? I think it's fairly straightforward that they are in the first instance, but where it goes from there, and yeah, there's a decision tree that's not quite so obvious, is there?
But you even have an example already in software. So I tell you, like, who's Bitcoin? Like, who belongs to? It's like, well, someone has to do it, so we can make a responsible. Whoever writes the software, we will make that person responsible. And then Bitcoin happens, and you're like, who did this? And it's like, well, no, because it's built in such a way that they just dropped it.
That's an interesting point.
So it's not, like, doesn't have an owner.
That's
It's no foundation.
Yeah, because then the owner is the bearer of the private keys, right? And so if I understood you correctly, please correct me, is that if someone writes the software for an autonomous agent or procures an autonomous agent, but that autonomous agent then does something in a way that's replicable and can propagate through an ecosystem to the benefit of other people and without your ability to control it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like decentralized, open source. Who's responsible for that?
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, I don't think that this, like, we should worry about this in the next 5 years. Like, we are already worried about like the mass unemployment. That I think that it's something that we need to worry about. But most of the stuff that I was not interested in sci-fi before, right now I am reading saying like, okay, let's see how things may play out, because these people seem to, like through imagination, being able to map stuff that may be useful for me to understand the world.
Oh, wow. Fascinating stuff. Jordi, thank you very much for making some time and coming on the podcast. Really appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge on the space, because it's very much a novelty. It's incredibly powerful. It's exciting. Some of the technology has potentially terrifying consequences that we all need to grapple with, because I think it's going to be within our lifetimes. This is not something that we can pass on to another generation. This is our generation. It's now. And so it's on the horizon and it's rising fast. Yeah. It's looming large, and we need to come to grips with it. and I don't have any answers. Not even sort of on a conceptual level that I think has a reasonable chance of working. I know UBI has been pushed, but I'm not optimistic about that either.
Yeah.
So
The most important thing is to understand like nobody has answers for this. Like whoever says like, oh, I know, don't trust them.
don't trust them, and we'll just have to wait to verify what happens.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Jordi. I really appreciate it. Tell everybody about your business, how they can find you, your Twitter handle as well, so they can get in touch with you.
So my Twitter handle is positiveblue2. You will see it like with my picture there. The one that has like most followers is the real one that sometimes spawns some fake clones. Then right now I am building FuseSats. That it's this idea of AI agents being able to pay for stuff. We can help there. If you want to spend your Bitcoin on stuff, we can help there, like through AI agents. If you want to just have AI agents that spend money on your behalf, that it's not Bitcoin but credit card, we can help there. And if you want to expose your services in a way that AI agents can consume, we can help you there too. I also have a podcast called Agents at Work. You can go to agents at work.dev. It's mainly for developers and enthusiasts of AI. And we talk about people who are building agents. So it's mostly like you need to be a bit technical because you need to be able to follow, like, it's really, really at the edge of what people are building today. But it's like pretty useful to be able that you are up to date with other ideas that people are building. And it's amazing when you plug them all together to see how much reality will change in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, it's really exciting and equally terrifying. So thanks again, Jordi.
Thank you very much. See you soon.